Hello, 38M. In less than a week, I will marry my gorgeous 35-year-old girlfriend of 4 years. This marks my second engagement. My ex-girlfriend, 38F, and I almost got married 12 years ago. She was my high school sweetheart, and we had been dating for 10 years. We had lived together for 5 years, so I was naturally eager to marry. It seems that she was as well. My family adored my ex as well, so they were overjoyed when I announced our engagement. But that did not happen since, only one day before the wedding, my ex slept with my brother, 34. My ex had told me to spend the night before the wedding in a hotel while she stayed at home because she believed we needed to stay separate to avoid bad luck, and I did as she asked. Unfortunately, or perhaps luckily, I had forgotten my shoes at home and had to go back for them a few hours after arriving at the hotel. When I returned home, I was shocked to notice that the lights were turned off in the living room, as my ex despised turning out the lights when leaving a room. I could not believe she had remembered. I entered and walked straight to my bedroom, which was where I kept the shoebox because it was so significant to me. But when I opened the door to my room, I was met with the worst sight I'd ever seen. My ex was lying in bed with my own younger brother, so engrossed in their act that they barely realized I'd entered the room. They just noticed me after a few seconds, but I was frozen and didn't know what to do. My world came crashing down around me, and as soon as I recognized what I had experienced, I fled while my ex pursued me. I drove back to the motel, hyperventilating, panicked, and refusing to believe what I'd witnessed. I was going to get married the next day, so this was just absurd. It took me a lot to calm down once I arrived in my room, and I ended up crying for at least an hour. Fortunately, I hadn't told my ex which hotel I was at, so she couldn't reach me and could only text me, which she did. She sent me a slew of apology texts and tried to persuade me that this was just a one-time occurrence, but I had serious doubts. She also stated that the wedding was stressing her out, so she wanted to let off steam, and my brother had always been there for her, so she didn't know who to turn to. I couldn't believe she was even trying to defend herself after what I'd witnessed, so I blocked her right away. I also blocked my brother since I was not interested in any of their phony apologies. It took me a while, but I was able to gather myself together and cancel all of the wedding plans first and foremost because no matter how much money I lost, I was going to get out of this situation. My ex had just squandered 10 years of my life, so I didn't mind losing a few $1,000 if it meant I wouldn't have to be with her again. The next thing I did was call my folks and explain what had transpired. They were unsure whether they should console me or cut my brother off, so I gave them some time to think about it. It was late in the evening, so I ordered some dinner and then wept myself to sleep. After that day, I only saw my ex twice. Once when she returned home to pack up her belongings and leave, and again a few years later at a mutual friend's party, where she tried to talk to me, but I walked away as soon as I noticed her approaching. My brother and I have not communicated since then, since my parents have cut him off for what he has done to me. Last I heard, he was working in Europe and hadn't returned for 3 years. Anyway, that was all in the past, and I've moved on from that dreadful experience. I'm in a better situation now, and I'm with a wonderful woman in whom I fully trust. It was going well until a few days ago, exactly 1 week before my wedding, when my ex contacted me. I'm not sure how she found out about me or my wedding, but she contacted me via a new Facebook account after I closed her old account, and she sent me a slew of messages about how upset she was to learn that I was getting married again. It seemed funny to me that she said again, because while we almost got married, we never truly were married. But in any case, it felt like déjà vu, the way she begged me to accept her back, despite everything she'd done and the fact that I was the only man she'd ever loved. It really got to me, and I informed my fiancé about it right away. Part of me wanted to tell her off for disturbing me before my wedding, but another, more unforgiving part of me desired vengeance. I knew I'd done the right thing all those years ago, and dealt with the matter maturely, but this time I wanted to screw her up so badly that she'd never think of contacting me again. When I told my fiancé how I felt, she was completely on board because, while she had been cheated on before and it wasn't a 10-year relationship, it still hurt, so she understood how I felt. So, instead of just letting things go, we devised a strategy to get retribution and ensure that my ex experienced the same misery that she caused me. This is why, a few hours after receiving her text, I decided to contact her back, stating that I was finally ready to speak with her. She said she was ready to come to my apartment right away, but I told her to book a room at a nearby hotel, and I'd meet her there the next day so my fiancé wouldn't be suspicious. Of course, my fiancé was immediately alongside me while I spoke to her. She agreed to everything, so the next day I went to her hotel at the hour we agreed on. She appeared pleased to see me and was crying happy tears, but she would be crying real tears in a few minutes. She sat me down and began explaining how she had been so sorry for what had happened for the past 12 years and wanted to make it up to me, but didn't know how to reach me until she heard from a friend that I was getting married again, and she knew she had to text me one last time or else she'd lose me for good. I listened to her closely, tried to be interested, and held her hands while she spoke. Meanwhile, I was only waiting for my fiancé to arrive. Almost 20 minutes later, there was a knock on the door, which I rushed to open. My fiancé entered, followed by all of our groomsmen and bridesmaids dressed in masks of my brother's face. They'd also brought a cake, which made my brother smile as he looked up at us. My ex was appalled and couldn't find the words to say anything. We yelled surprise as she gazed on with a stunned expression on her face, because I doubt anyone could have predicted this. We'd convinced the hotel personnel that we were surprising her, which was pretty simple because she'd already told them to let in any visitors who wanted to see her, which she'd intended only for me. But I had other intentions. After she had processed what was going on, she began sobbing and mumbling some unintelligible gibberish while crying, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook so lightly. She had the guts to approach me just a week before my wedding, despite cheating on me with my own brother the day before we were meant to marry, and now she'd have to face the repercussions of her actions. I told her that this was what she deserved, and that if she thought she had a shot with me after cheating on me, she was mistaken. She had no business texting me after what she had put me through, and I was relieved that she was devastated by what I had done because she had brought it on herself. I was cold and brusque while stating all of this, but she kept sobbing and crying that if I didn't want her back, I should have ignored and blocked her instead of humiliating her in this way. But I didn't feel sorry for her, not then or today. I warned her not to talk to me again, and then left her crying alone in the hotel room. Now, I'm supposed to marry in 2 days, but some of my fiancé's friends want me to apologize to my ex because they believe the way I told her off that day was harsh and she didn't deserve it, regardless of what she'd done. My groomsmen do not share this emotion because they have known me since middle school, and they are also well aware of how I had to battle depression and fight for my life in the years following my breakup with my ex due to what had occurred. They also knew how much I adored her and what she meant to me, so they didn't mind what I did. My fiancé's pals were probably anticipating some high school drama to talk about later, but this was too raw and real for them. My fiancé supports me and does not believe I should apologize, but her friends are refusing to attend the wedding until I do so now. I'm conflicted because on the one hand, I don't want my fiancé to be sad on our wedding day. After all, she loves her friends, but I also don't believe I owe my ex an apology at all. She could have kept me out of my life, and this would not have happened, but she didn't want me to be happy. In fact, she's still attempting to play the victim here, sending me texts from spam accounts about how I destroyed her heart, and how it will undoubtedly come back to me eventually. I dislike this type of emotional manipulation, especially from my ex and my fiancé's bridesmaids. I know she won't tell me to apologize only for her sake, but I feel obligated to at this point. That is why I am here. I'm running out of time and need to select what I want to accomplish right now. Am I the a-hole for shaming my unfaithful ex after she sought to reconcile with me just a week before my wedding? Update #1. To say the least, the reception has been quite divergent. There's only 1 day until the wedding, and I've chosen to speak with my fiancé before doing anything. As most others had suggested, I informed her how I was feeling, and she immediately responded that I didn't have to apologize to my ex just because her bridesmaids thought so, and if it bothered them, they should skip her wedding. She told me that her bridesmaids had no idea what had happened, and most of them believed I had overreacted, even after she explained that my ex and I had been together for a decade and had cheated on me with my brother, things that are incomprehensibly cruel and should not be forgiven. They were still persuaded that I was unreasonable and owed her an apology, so she gave up attempting to explain my side of the story to them, and even informed them that they didn't have to attend our wedding if they didn't want to. She hasn't spoken to her friends in a day, and it appears unlikely that they'll attend. One of them even reimbursed her for the expense of the bridesmaid dresses she purchased for them all, and she believes that the majority of them will skip. She's putting up a tough front for my sake, but I can tell she's grieving because these women have been her friends since high school. My fiancé claims she doesn't care, but I know she does deep down, so I've decided to talk to her friends and try to persuade them. My ex is still a complete pain. She called me a few hours earlier and spent 15 minutes arguing with me. She was genuinely trying to convince me that I still loved her, but I was too proud to confess it. And why was she saying this? Well, apparently it's because I went to such lengths to humiliate her, which implied that I still had affection for her deep down. Yes, she is correct, but there are feelings of hatred and loathing For whatever reason, she feels I only wanted to see her one last time, which is why I held her hands as she was speaking, but in reality, that was just to shock her even more. I literally laughed in her face while speaking with her, expecting she'd get the idea, but she kept blabbering about how we were soulmates and how I needed to cancel the wedding before I made a major mistake. To be honest, the only reason I'm even entertaining this is to prevent her from doing something stupid. I've been trying to get through to her parents so they can take her away but haven't been able to, so I'm just waiting for them to react, and then I'll be able to get rid of her for good. Don't get me wrong, I still despise her, but I also don't want her to harm herself. I am not that inhuman. Update #2. Hey guys, we're officially married now. It's been a few days since the wedding, and I still can't believe it. She's now my wife. I'm overjoyed, yet there's still some bad news. Despite my best efforts, her friends did not attend the wedding. I personally called each of them to explain why I did what I did and why I refused to apologize, but they didn't seem to care. Even when I urged them to come for my wife's sake, they weren't too enthusiastic. It just felt strange to me because I would definitely attend a friend's wedding, even if I didn't particularly like the person they were marrying. I just found out the real reason yesterday when my wife said that she had a hunch her friends wouldn't come, regardless of whether I apologized, because she had refused to do what they had asked of her and disagreed with them. They didn't like it since they believed they were all one unit and needed to present a united front at all times. These were her high school friends, and while she'd managed to keep them over the years because they never had much to disagree about, this was the first time their friendship had been put to the test, and she chose me over her friends, which they didn't like. She stated that she was slightly upset about it but was too embarrassed to express it because it was also juvenile. I didn't mind because I was now certain that this wasn't my fault and that her friends were simply self-centered. My wife even admitted that a part of her was relieved that they declined to go because she could finally stop trying to fit in all the time and live life on her own terms without continuously seeking her friends' approval. So that was excellent for us, I guess. In addition, my ex's parents finally reacted to me on the evening before my wedding. I quickly explained to them what their daughter had attempted to do and how they needed to get to the motel she'd been sleeping in and bring her back with them for her own safety because she was acting psychotic and delusional, and I didn't think it was safe for her to be alone. As it turned out, they'd been on a hiking excursion with no network, but now that they'd returned, they told me that they'd come to get her as soon as possible and thanked me for notifying them. I haven't heard from them since, but I'm guessing she made it home safely. Update #3. Hello everyone, it's been a week since my wedding, and it's been nothing but drama thus far. As I previously stated, my ex's parents had not communicated with me since the last time we spoke. I assumed they would take her home, but apparently not. 2 nights ago, there was a knock on our door, and because it was so late, my wife and I had no idea who it could be because we hadn't expected anyone. I made the mistake of entering the door before checking the cameras, and when I did, my ex pushed past me and entered with her baggage. My wife was seated on the couch and sprung to her feet the moment my ex walked in. I was about to ask her what she was doing in my house when she interrupted and said she was staying. She told me that her parents had been to take her home a few days before, but she declined since she knew I would take her back soon. My wife and I were astonished and had no idea how to react because everything appeared so weird. She informed me that her parents tried to compel her to return with them, but she had a large argument with them and ended up staying in the hotel, but she was running out of money and chose to move to my apartment instead. The rationale was that if I spent enough time with her again, I would be reminded of the past and fall in love with her all over again. I had absolutely no idea how to react because everything was so odd. My wife attempted to speak to her, but she ignored her and instead spoke to me, requesting that I allow her to live with us. I gently informed her that I was now married and that she could not simply come up here to live with me, but she stated that she did not acknowledge the wedding. Therefore, in her opinion, I was still single. I couldn't believe this was happening, but I also didn't have the heart to kick her out because she appeared to be genuinely unstable and in need of care. So I sat her down and instructed her to wait in the living room while I went into the bedroom with my wife to discuss our future steps. Fortunately, my wife was compassionate and recognized that my ex's behavior was seriously odd. We realized she needed substantial professional help. I attempted to contact her parents, but they refused to take my calls and texted back that they couldn't compel her to return, and she was clearly too insane to live with them, so she was on her own. They were plainly embarrassed by her, and it was disgusting that they were willing to abandon their own daughter once they discovered she was going through something. With no other options, I opted to call my own parents, who arrived within half an hour. My ex had fallen asleep on the couch in the meantime, which was extremely fortunate because, when my parents came, we decided to take her to a therapist as soon as possible because there was no telling what she was capable of at this point. My wife and I let her stay that night because, honestly, we couldn't bring ourselves to dislike her anymore given how tragic the scenario was. Clearly, something had snapped in her mind and she needed to be treated right away. The destitute woman had lost even her parents as a source of support. My parents and I took her to the hospital the next day, and she was still gushing about how happy she was that I was finally coming around and had even begun planning our wedding. We took her to see a mental health specialist, but she declined, claiming that she felt fine already. After much fighting and complications, the physicians were able to calm her down with some medications and deliver some pills to her that I can't recall the names of. She appeared to settle down after that, and 1 or 2 hours later, she expressed a desire to return home. I brought her home, and we let her rest in a room while my family and I sat in the main room, pondering our next steps. My wife and I were relieved when she stated she wanted to go home right away, and we even helped her pack her belongings into the trunk of our car before driving her home together. She remained mute throughout, as did we, because what could we possibly say in such a situation? When she returned home, she apologized to both of us for causing difficulty and expressed her remorse over all that had happened. My wife and I felt quite embarrassed throughout the entire situation, but we assured her that everything was fine and encouraged her to take care of herself before driving home. I wasn't sure if it would help or not, but I contacted my ex's mother and told her everything that had transpired, and I believe that ultimately made them realize the gravity of the situation. She informed me that she has moved in with her daughter and that she will keep us updated. Despite what has happened thus far, my wife and I sincerely hope that she recovers.